Hey guys, this week we are just going to have one lesson over basic multiplication facts. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we are going to work up to learning the learning target. I can easily multiply larger whole numbers. So that means that we're getting to a point where we would be multiplying a 3-digit number by a 3-digit number. But before we get to those larger numbers, I'm going to work your way up one step at a time. So this week we are just practicing basic multiplication facts from 0 to 12. So starting out, let's just talk about some vocabulary just so that you remember some of these terms. Multiplication is actually the process of adding a number to itself a certain number of times. In other words, it's considered repeated addition. There are three parts to a multiplication problem: the multiplicand, the multiplier, and the product. The multiplicand is the number you have in each group, and the multiplier is the number of groups. The answer to a multiplication problem is called a product. That's something that's really important to recognize, is that term, product, the answer to a multiplication problem. It's also very important to understand that multiplication is repeated addition. It's not just memorizing facts. There's a meaning behind multiplication. The multiplicand and the multiplier can actually be switched around. You're going to be learning that in Miss Sloan's class when you're talking about properties of operations, when we're talking about the commutative property of multiplication. Okay, so in this example, imagine there are 5 houses on your street and 4 people live in each house. We want to know how many total people live on your street. So, multiplication is repeated addition. We have 5 groups of houses, and there are 4 people in each group. When we add 4 to itself 5 times, we're going to get the total number of people, or the product of this answer. So we have 4 people in this house, plus the 4 people in this house, that's 8, plus the 4 people in this house, that's 12, plus the 4 people in this house, that's 16, plus 4 people, that's 20. So the product of 5 houses times 4 people is 20 total people. Here is another example of something that you could do if you were working out a multiplication problem on a piece of paper. Say you have a problem like 3 times 6. You might already know what the answer to 3 times 6 is, and that's great. That's something that you've probably had to memorize since the 3rd grade, having to memorize these multiplication facts. But if you still have some of those multiplication facts that you don't remember, or it's just been a while since you've practiced them, this is something else that you can do to solve a basic multiplication problem. Just draw it out. So 3 times 6, we have 3 groups, or 3 large circles. And there are 6 triangles in each group. You can count the 6 triangles. To find the product, we have to count the total number of triangles. So you can either count each triangle individually, or you can just add repeatedly. We have 6 triangles here, plus 6 triangles here. 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 6 triangles here. 12 plus 6 is 18. Since there are 18 total triangles in this problem, 3 times 6 equals 18. Here's another example. Say you have a problem like 4 times 8. You might already know what 4 times 8 is, and that's great. If you already know it, you would just type it out, give me your answer. But if not, you can put your circles on a piece of paper and use some tally marks or some dots and count them up. So in this example, I did 8 groups because it doesn't matter whether you have 4 groups or 8 groups, as long as you have the other number of triangles. So I have 8 groups, 8 circles, and there are 4 triangles in each circle. So I can either add all of the individual triangles, or I can repeatedly add the number 4. 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 4 is 12, plus 4 is 16, plus these 4 is 20, plus 4, 24, plus 4, 28, plus 4, 32. There are 32 total triangles in this picture, so 4 times 8 is 32. Another thing you could use is something called an array. It's a set of rows and columns. So say you have a problem like 11 times 5. In this array, I have created 11 rows in a table. No, these are columns. 11 columns in a table. The columns are going up and down. And I've got 5 rows. The rows go side to side. Now, if I want to know the product of 11 times 5, I can add all of these little squares, which is going to take some time. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Or you can repeatedly add 11 5 times. You could go 11, 22, 33, 44, 55. It also works the other way. You could add 5 11 times. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. Either way you do it, whether you count them all, you add by 11, or you add by 5, you're going to get 55 as your product, your answer. Here's another array. 7 times 3. I have 7 columns and 3 rows. I can either add all the little squares in my table, or I can add 7 plus 7, which is 14, plus 7, which is 21, or I can add my 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 3 is 9, plus 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18, plus 3 is 21. So either way you do it, you have 7 times 3 equal to 21 as your product. I'm just going to quickly go through some of these multiplication rules. Some of you guys are already familiar with that, and that's great. But this is just a quick reminder. Anytime you multiply by a 0, your product is going to be 0. Anytime you multiply a number by 1, you're going to get the number itself. So 12 times 1, the number itself is 12. Anytime you're multiplying by 2, you are doubling the number that you're multiplying by. So if you do 8 times 2, you are doubling 8. 8 plus 8 is 16. 3s and 4s, a lot of you guys should be pretty familiar with adding your 3s and adding your 4s. Your 5s, you're probably really good at adding too, because if you're adding 5s, your answer is always going to end in a 0 or a 5. 6, 7, 8, there really aren't any rules to that. You either have to memorize it, or you're going to have to add using groups. Or say you have a problem like 6 times 8 and you don't know what 6 times 8 is. Well, maybe you know what 5 times 8 is. 5 times 8 is 40. If you add 8 more, you're going to have 48. So that would be 6 times 8, which would be 48. Anything that works for you that helps you find the answer to a multiplication problem is going to work for me. Okay, here's just a really quick rule for multiplying by 9 if you like using your hands. In this example, you're doing 9 times 8. So if you're doing 9 times 8, you're going to count, starting with your pinky finger, you're going to count over 8 fingers. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to put that eighth finger down, and the fingers I have left are 72. 7 on this side, these 7, that's 7, and then I have these 2, 72. I could also do 9 times 4. Say I want to do 4. So I'm going to start with my pinky finger, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put my fourth finger down, and then I'm left with 36. That's just a quick rule that you can use if you like using your hands, or you can use one of the other methods that I've talked to you about. Okay, multiplying by 10, your answer is always going to be the number that you multiplied by 10, and then you're going to add a 0 to the end of it. So 10 times 8, you're going to have the 8 with a 0 added to the end, and it's going to make it 80. If it's 10 times 10, then you have 10, you add a 0 after it, and it gives you 100. This is the last slide that I actually have. I did not make a slide for 11s or 12s. 11s are pretty easy to add. If you're doing 11 times 2, there's going to be 2 2s in your answer, 22. If it's 11 times 3, there's going to be 2 3s in your answer. That's 33. If it's 11 times 5, it's 2 5s in your answer, 55. That only works to 11 times 9. After that, you either have to memorize the multiplication facts, or you're going to have to use those arrays, or use your grouping, drawing it out on a piece of paper. So hopefully the next 2 days, we're going to be practicing multiplication facts. You can either use your memorization skills if you've already memorized them, or you can use some of the extra options that I gave you today. You can use arrays, where you can draw it out on a piece of paper and add it up. You could add it up in your hand. You could use your fingers. Whatever method works for you is fine with me, as long as you're learning how to multiply and do that repeated addition to get your answer. So good luck this week. Let me know if you need any help with anything, and I would be glad to set up a Google Meet or answer your questions. I'll talk to you later.